In the Spirit, the angel carried me to a high and great mountain and showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God. Amen. Amen. A city coming down out of heaven? Really? What's that? An Avatar movie, that's what it feels like. I mean, how can a city, and why a city, that just kind of floats on down from heaven? Images such as these that come out of Revelation that we've been hearing for the last couple of weeks and will continue to hear for at least one more week seem otherworldly, out of our world, something that doesn't make sense half the time, or 3/4 of the time, or sometimes the entire time. And today just might be one of those days. For the city, I suspect most of us here, well, we moved here, especially as locals, because we didn't want to live in a city. We like the country. We like where the land, there's distance between houses and there's clean air to breathe. But for John, the city was the center of God. It's where the Lamb was. It was that immediate place where all went to be fed, where all went to know the fullness of God. For in those days, when John was writing his Revelation, the temple had been destroyed. And so a new temple, something that was coming down from heaven, was hopeful, was joyous, gave the people of God something to hold on to. And yet there are images in and through that city coming down out of heaven from God that do start to make sense. They do ring true, for there was a river flowing in the middle of it. Well, we get rivers. They meander. They wander. Sometimes they're steep and sometimes they're slow. Sometimes the water just drops, doesn't it? We go to look at those places especially. Think of Moss Glens Falls. All our visitors go over there because it's beautiful. The riverbeds are often called in the Psalms, especially in 126, the water courses of the Negev. The water courses, that which leads water, is a river. And yet in the desert, we find what? Riverbeds. A place where there is no water. But we can still see the path the river took. Sometimes it's a journey filled with life, except in those deserts it feels as though there's no water. Water is that which it carries. The river is one thing, and yet the water is the next. And it says that this carries the water of life. That water has something special to it. In that gospel lesson, the second gospel lesson, talked about a man. This is probably the same John who's writing. So there's a theme here. This John writes a story about Jesus meeting a man who was crippled for 38 years. Water is holy, isn't it? For we get baptized in it. The Israelites walked through it. And this man knew that. And there was holiness, and he the water was stirred up and life, healing, and hope would be found. You may have noticed that Jesus was the living water that day. The man no longer needed to step into that pool because the moving water was given in the words of Jesus. Water, it fills our life. We cannot live without it. We can live without food. Well, not too long, but we can. But we cannot live without water. Water is the way of life. It is the course that calls us and moves us and gives us the journey. Whether it's on a boat, or whether we're swimming, or on a raft, or maybe we're just sitting by the bank of the river. You may have noticed Paul today was also sitting by the river, this time, however, outside that city. He was sitting there, and it was the Sabbath, and they were gathering for prayer. And a woman from Lysteria, I think is how you pronounce that name of the town, a Roman city, came out. She was a wealthy woman. Those who dealt in purple cloth had means to have a store, a business, you could say, of very expensive cloth. In our day, we call it the overhead was pretty high. And she found this one, this Paul, who had an amazing story to tell. Jesus Christ was risen from the dead, and the city, Jerusalem, is coming down. And the Lamb at the center of that river, the river that they were standing by, was to come. And on those riverbanks grew trees. Now you may have noticed that every good town plants itself by water. Without it, how can people live? And so this river was feeding the people sitting on the bank. And the trees that grew were luscious, filled with leaves and life. For we hear they are the trees of life, trees that never withered. Have you ever seen a tree that never withers? Minus the tropics, but even those never have a day that the leaves will fall off. John never said that they do. So much so, they produce fruit. Different kinds of fruit. Apples one month and oranges the next. Pomegranates and limes. We can find 12 or about 9 other fruit that might grow on trees. And it always is producing. It never ends. It never ends in that city where the water course is running through, where the Lamb is sitting in the middle. It is the place of the fullness of life. Water in the city, by the river, and the tree of life. Behind me is a table. A table that we go to Sunday after Sunday. In the olden days, some of you may remember these. We don't have to go very far to other churches. They're not made of wood. But ours, given the name of deed, when this building was built, our beloved Cliff's wife, was made of wood. It was hewn, I believe, from wood the state of Vermont, is what I was told, that most likely lived near water, a river. And it was deep, its roots, and it went into the soil and grabbed all that God had for it to give life. And on it, Sunday after Sunday after Sunday, is the food of life, of eternal life. And it holds to us the fullness of God in the land, in the middle of that river, in the city that is coming from heaven. And the Spirit, through the angel, carried us to a great and high mountain and showed us a holy city, Jerusalem, a holy city, coming down out of heaven